I'm Megyn Kelly, live in New York City. And tonight,
breaking news tonight on our nation's vets and how Congress just reneged on a very big promise. Plus,
make no mistake, we will bring to justice the killers who attacked our people.
You just saw The Factor breaking down the big Benghazi news, but how did the rest of the media cover it? Bernie Goldberg is here. And then,
tell Senator Shaheen.
Tell Kay Hagan.
Tell Congressman Barber. Tell Congressman Braley. Obamacare is hurting.
Some Democrats facing a new political ad assault so fierce that the New York Times is now warning this could tip the midterms. We'll show you why tonight on The Kelly File.
And breaking tonight, the Senate Intelligence Committee today releasing a scathing report on the terror attack in Benghazi. And the bipartisan report points the finger of blame directly at Hillary Clinton's State Department for the failures leading up to the death of 4 Americans. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. A busy night tonight. The report is out and the findings are clear. A 15-month review determines that not only were al-Qaeda groups behind the attack on September 11, 2012, contrary to what the White House and the New York Times told the world, but that it could and should have been prevented. The report concludes as follows. This is a quote. The failures of Benghazi can be summed up this way. The Americans serving in Libya were vulnerable. The State Department knew they were vulnerable, and no one in the administration really did anything about it. The intelligence community does not collect intelligence about threats in our security in dangerous places so it can be ignored by senior decision makers. Yet the intelligence and warnings from the field were met by this administration with a deafening silence. The 4 Americans who perished in Benghazi deserved better from their country. That is from Democrats and Republicans alike. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, with the very latest now. Catherine.
Well, thank you, Megyn. This new Senate report blows apart claims that the Benghazi attack was the work of local extremists with no formal terrorist connections.
Several al-Qaeda members emerged as kind of leaders of the pack. So I can say with complete confidence that al-Qaeda was involved in it.
The report concludes that a former Guantanamo detainee, Sufyan bin Kumu, first identified by Fox News as a suspect 16 months ago, was involved in the planning. The Senate committee also sought a State Department classified cable, first reported by Fox News as well, that summarized an emergency meeting in Benghazi 1 month before the assault, which warned al-Qaeda training camps were operating and the consulate could not defend against a coordinated attack.
Well, they resisted for a long time in providing it to us, but at the end of the day, we did secure the cable.
And the senator told us it's part of a pattern where the State Department continues to block access to witnesses and documents that should explain whether a White House meeting on the day of the assault, believed to include then Defense Secretary Panetta, Secretary of State Clinton, the Vice President, and briefly President Obama, set the marching orders for explaining the attack.
No, we weren't. We've been stonewalled on that question. We've asked time and again, who was in the meeting and what was the substance of that meeting? And we have not gotten answers to that.
The Democratic head of the committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein, says she hopes the report will put to rest the conspiracy theories and political accusations. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney says the findings reinforce what other investigations have found, but Carney failed to address one of the most significant findings, that Benghazi was an al-Qaeda-led event. Megyn.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is the second shoe, a major one, to drop in the Benghazi investigation this week. On Monday, as we told you, once classified testimony was revealed, proving that this administration knew that this was a terrorist attack from day one, despite their refusal to admit that fact. We learned on Monday that in a 2013 hearing, General Carter Ham, who was at the time the head of AFRICOM, which oversees Libya, told a congressional committee, quote, I think at the command, I personally, and I think the command, very quickly got to the point that this was not a demonstration. This was a terrorist attack. A congressman followed up, and you would have advised as such if asked. Would that be correct? General Ham replied, well, and with General Dempsey and Secretary Panetta, that is the nature of the conversation we had. Yes, sir. He's referring there to the then Defense Secretary, Leon Panetta, and General Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who were on their way to meet with President Obama moments after they spoke with General Ham, as the attack was still in full swing. Mr. Panetta later testified that he was the one, indeed, of course, who informed the president that this was an attack underway, adding, Mr. Panetta did, that there was no question in his mind, Mr. Panetta's, that it was, quote, a terrorist attack. Despite all of that we've now learned and seen in writing this week, this is what we heard from the president and his team for weeks after.
There's no doubt that the kind of weapons that were used, the ongoing assault, that it wasn't just a mob action. Now, we don't have all the information yet, and so we're still gathering it.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
We have no information to suggest that it was a pre-planned attack. The unrest we've seen around the region has been in reaction to a video.
In fact, this was not a pre-planned, premeditated attack. That what happened initially was that it was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired in Cairo as a consequence of the video.
Wow. Mark Thiessen is a former presidential speechwriter, an American Enterprise Institute fellow, and a columnist for The Washington Post. And so these conclusions, in particular this Senate report tonight, Mark, puts the blame squarely on the State Department, saying they had been repeatedly warned and nothing was done. They were not protected, and they had every reason to listen to those begging for Hillary Clinton's State Department to do something they did not. And so I ask you about the political fallout now for the administration and for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, this is devastating for Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is a bipartisan report. So it's her own members of her own party are saying that she was repeatedly warned and that this attack was completely preventable. And the Intelligence Committee gave us all the information we needed, that there was something was going to happen and that we needed to fortify that embassy and that consulate area. And we did, and they didn't do it. Now, recall that Hillary Clinton was the one who campaigned against Barack Obama with that famous 3 a.m. phone call ad, that she would be the one ready to answer the call at 3 a.m. Well, you know what? The phone was ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing for months, and she never answered the call. So that is absolutely devastating for Hillary Clinton.
They have said, okay, well, we don't know whether Hillary Clinton knew. Maybe just her minions knew, or the people who reported to her knew, but didn't tell her. And Saxby Chambliss talked about their desire to get to the bottom of issues like that by getting more information from the State Department. Here's what he told Greta earlier tonight. Listen.
What Secretary Clinton saw, I don't know.
Did you guys interview her?
She did not testify before our committee. We don't have jurisdiction over the State Department. We pounded on the State Department for documents as well as interviews with individuals, and we kind of hit a stone wall with them on that.
They got stonewalled. Why? Why are they getting stonewalled?
I have no idea. And I have honestly, Megan, I have a minimum of high regard for people who always blame their minions. That we're hearing this a lot these days. I didn't know. No one told me. My staff was responsible in all these different scandals. And I'm sorry, Secretary Clinton is the Secretary of State. She is responsible for the embassy. And by the way, why didn't she step up and do those 5 Sunday shows the day after? Susan Rice is not the Secretary of State. She's the Secretary of State. One of her ambassadors was killed on the job for the first time in 60 years, and she didn't even have the courtesy to go out to the American people and explain it to them. And she put it on Susan Rice, who then went out and delivered this line. I mean, there's a lot of questions Hillary Clinton has to answer here.
Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
This seems like a major story, but you might not know it if you were taking a casual look at the media coverage of Benghazi this week. Bernie Goldberg's with us now. He's a Fox News media analyst. Bernie, the numbers are, as you watch, in particular, the mainstream media cover the news of the week, you see a lot about Chris Christie and Bridgegate, which is a story. Right. Not so much about this.
Absolutely true. So what we know for certain, thanks to James Rosen's reporting, he broke that story, that the Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs told Barack Obama minutes after the attack in Benghazi started that it was a terrorist attack. So what happened after that, as your montage showed? Susan Rice went out on all the talk shows and gave this fairy tale version that it was an anti-Muslim video. We may have suspected that wasn't true, but Barack Obama knew it wasn't true, and he let her mislead the American people. Then over the next 2 weeks, a variety of members of his administration, use whatever verb you want, lied to the American people, misled the American people, told half-truths, however you want to put it, and the president let them do it. He knew because Panetta and General Dempsey told him it was a terrorist attack. So how did the media cover this, right? 35 minutes on the networks on Monday and Tuesday when this story broke, 35 minutes on the George Washington Bridge traffic jam, and zero time on Benghazi, and no major newspaper covered it either. Now, one thing I know for sure, even though it isn't even speculation, we all know for sure, if George Bush were president and he misled the American people for several weeks and his administration did, that would get some play in the media and on television.
And I understand, obviously, we're talking about President Obama and his administration, but we're also talking about Chris Christie and Hillary Clinton, who we believe are the likely frontrunners for, the next presidential post. So Chris Christie gets a lot of coverage for Bridgegate, but what about Hillary Clinton and how this reflects on her?
That's a very important question, and I'm not so sure I agree with your previous guest who said Hillary Clinton is in a lot of trouble. She ought to be in a lot of trouble. I agree with that, but a lot's going to depend on how the so-called mainstream media deal with this. Now, as I say, they're not going to ignore this story that came out today, the Senate report. That's much too big a story to play down or ignore. And that report blames the State Department. But let's see what happens in editorials and in commentary and columns. And so let's see how journalists, so-called mainstream journalists, handle this with respect to Hillary. Are they going to go after her as being responsible since she headed up the State Department? Or are they going to cover for her because of what you said,
because
2016?
So far, Bernie, the Bridge scandal is not tied directly to Christie. It's the people who work for Christie. So far, the State Department Benghazi thing has not yet been tied directly to Hillary Clinton, the people who work for her. And so shouldn't there be an equal approach in going after it with fervor on both sides?
There should, but the reason the media isn't worried about being even-handed is because they know the American people really don't care about Benghazi. I don't mean the people watching us tonight. They care. Look, half the people in the United States think Benghazi is the latest hotspot over here on South Beach. But everybody cares about traffic jams. That's how shallow a lot of the American people are. So traffic is going to get 35 minutes on the networks on Monday and Tuesday, and the Benghazi report that said the President of the United States misled us for several weeks because he knew it was a terrorist. That gets no play.
And then went to Vegas.
The American people shouldn't get off too easy on that.
That he was told by Leon Panetta that it was a terrorist attack as it was happening, and then went to Vegas on a campaign fundraiser. I got to run.
I'm glad.
We got way more than we can fit into the show tonight, Bernie. Thanks so much for being here.
Right.